From my background and belief, it's gold. It is for investment, and so there are other uses. A lot of jewelry demand out of India, gold, but again, that demand in jewelry is for investment. This is where you store your gold. So in the end, gold always comes back to a store of wealth.
Welcome, Joe, to the YouTube channel. It's a true pleasure to have you on here.
Great to be here. Thank you very much.
Perfect. I would like to get right into this conversation by asking you a pretty blunt question. But before that, I have to paint a bit of context for the viewers at home, because, of course, you, Joe, are the CEO of P2 Gold, which is a company that's exploring multiple properties, mainly in gold and copper and gold combination. Now my question for you, Joe, is why would anyone watching this video invest in your company, P2 Gold?
Few reasons. Experienced management team. We own a significant portion of the company, over 20%, which we've paid market prices for. And we have two great projects, and a big exploration project up in Northwest British Columbia and a solid project down in Nevada. Both safe jurisdictions.
Okay, perfect. And let's dive a bit deeper into those two different projects that you mentioned. So the first one was in British Columbia, the BAM property. Could you perhaps dive a bit deeper into what this property is and what information the company currently has on this property?
Well, our BAM property, or BAM project, is located in the Golden Triangle, north of Vancouver, up close to the Alaska border. We're in the midst of an area that it's an area that's full of large gold, copper, porphyry systems. And if you look at the world today, the largest gold mines, long life gold mines, are gold, copper, porphyry systems. So we're in the heart of them. We're just east of the Galore Creek deposit owned by Teck and Newmont. We're southwest of Newcrest Gold's Red Chris mine, and Teck has another porphyry deposit just north of our property at the Shaft Creek deposit. So we're in the heart of where these big gold, copper porphyries are in Northwest British Columbia, and we believe our BAM project is sitting on top of multiple large porphyry targets. So this summer we plan to be in there, and we'll be drilling these targets through the summer months, starting in June.
Excellent, thanks for the explanation. Perhaps you can also dive a bit deeper into where and what stage of exploration the company currently is, and maybe give a short overview of what stages a mining company normally goes through, because some of the viewers at home might not be familiar with how the mining industry works.
Sure. Well, for P2 Gold, we have two projects. We have as I mentioned, our BAM project, early stage exploration in the Golden Triangle, where we believe we're onto something big. Down in Nevada, we have a project that's further along. It already has a gold mineral resource, gold copper mineral resource that we're now running the economics on. So usually the way a project works is there's grassroots exploration for discovery. Once you have a discovery, you drill it off. You get enough data about the deposit that you can run some economics. Your first economic test will be a preliminary economic analysis. That sort of gives you the go, no-go on whether you're going to move forward with the project from a mining perspective. With the PEA in hand, then you move forward usually to a pre-feasibility study to look at the feasibility of bringing it into production, then a feasibility study, and then once you have a feasibility study with positive economics, you would then raise the financing to build a mine and you go into production. Those are the steps that you follow.
Excellent explanation. So thank you for that. Really insightful. At what stage is the BAM project currently at?
BAM's at that early stage. We have a discovery of a gold deposit on surface, quite extensive area, over 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer square. But the real important thing about that discovery is, as all the indications that it's being driven by one of these large gold copper porphyries at depth. Based on our geophysics we've run, we believe those porphyries are within 500 meters of surface, well within mining distance from surface.
Okay, excellent. And the last question regarding the BAM project I have is timeline. Do you perhaps have a timeline for when we can expect drilling results, the PEA you started discussing? Do you have a timeline for those?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will start drilling depending on snow. Golden Triangle gets a lot of snow. So depending on this year's snowfall, it's still snowing up there, we would start drilling early to mid-June. First results would be out, all goes well, August, and then follow on after that. 6 to 8 weeks for results on average once a hole is drilled. So we'll start drilling early to mid-June, and then the results will tick off after that. We'll be drilling through the summer. Exploration season for early stage up in the Golden Triangle runs June through the end of September. On the PEA, our preliminary economic assessment on the Gabbs project is targeted to come out in the third quarter. I'd like to say July, but it depends on how busy the engineers are and how we've engaged a firm with a great reputation out of Reno, Nevada, to do the PEA, and they're busy because they have a great reputation. So it depends how much time we can get of theirs, but Q3 is the target.
Excellent, for sure, exciting milestones. So let's dive a bit deeper into that Gabbs property in Nevada you started talking about, because it's actually a gold and a copper combination resource as far as I'm aware. Could you perhaps explain what information the company currently has on this property and what steps it's trying to take going forward?
Okay, well, currently there's a mineral resource on the property. If you look at it globally, there's indicated and inferred resources, but globally looking at it, we have 2.76 million ounces of gold equivalent. That's made up of about 1.5 million ounces of gold. The remainder, about 1.2 million ounces of that gold, is made out of copper equivalent to gold based on pricing. So that project, lots of room to expand it and make it bigger, but we're looking at the economics right now to see about whether it's worth bringing it into production. We believe copper has got a great future with all the electrification that's going on. Copper is going to be in short supply. So we're great future for copper and gold. We'll talk about gold, but there's always demand for gold, and we see more coming into the future. So Gabbs is going to be quite a project going forward.
Okay, great. Thank you for your insights. Now I've got a question regarding complexity of having two different materials in the same resource. Because you can argue it both ways. Basically, you can say that a property becomes more complex, so cost per ton on an operational cost basis might go up. But also you could argue that economies of scope and economies of scale, those fun economic effects kick in, and then all of a sudden your operational cost per ton goes down. So perhaps you can explain to us what usually happens with these dual type of properties and what effects we can see going forward.
I think it depends. It gets a little more complicated because if the mineralization is oxide, well then you have issues with the gold and copper, and then with the sulfide you float them both. It's a way of processing it. You use flotation. You pull gold and copper both float well, and that pulls off and you sell a concentrate. So it does add complexity. On the other hand, oftentimes, while copper is strong, maybe gold's a little weaker. And when gold is strong, often the economy isn't doing so well, and so copper is weaker. So they really are a nice mix to have. You're always going to have one metal that's sort of moving towards a higher price and helping you with your economics.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for your insight and your knowledge on that. Really insightful to hear from an actual industry expert about these complexities. Now, the next question I want to ask you is regarding your shareholder base, because it seems that the management team has a significant position in the company, and there's also another party, I think it's called Waterton, which has a significant stake in the business. Could you perhaps dive a bit deeper into this and how that shareholder base actually works?
On the shareholder base, yes, management has roughly 22% of the company, which we've acquired in the market and in private placements from the company. Our average cost is in that 40 to 50 cent range for the management team. Waterton owns just slightly above 19% of the company, and they received their position. We purchased the Gabbs project off of them. Gabbs was a historical project discovered in sort of the 70s and 80s, had a fair bit of work done on it in the early 90s, and then it sat dormant. So they picked it up. We've purchased it off them, and that's how they got their position in the company.
Great. Thank you for the explanation. Two more topics I really want to discuss. First up is cash, which is, of course, the lifeblood for any exploration company. Perhaps you can explain what the current capital position of the company is and what the cash run rate looks like for the next couple of months and hopefully even years.
Well, on cash, we're in the midst of raising cash because we're looking at cash to fund our program this summer up at the BAM property. So target is to raise roughly $3 million, and that'll fund our first 10 to 12 holes, about 500-meter holes, which we will use to explore for that source porphyry on the property. Depending on success, we will then raise additional funds. But that's what we're looking at as our burn rate going forward. On the other side of the equation, we're not really spending too much money down at Gabbs right now. We're working on engineering studies, which bigger expenditures are in exploration than in engineering.
Perfect, thank you for the color on that. Now the last real topic I want to discuss with you is gold, actually. Because it seems like your company is mainly focusing gold with copper as a side play. So my question for you is, why would anyone invest in gold today?
Look, I think gold it's strong right now, around that $2,000 mark. I think we're going to continue to see a strong gold market for many, many years to come. The world is fragmenting. The US dollar maybe not quite as dominant as it once was. We have China and the US battling over supremacy here as to who's going to be calling the shots going forward. We have the BRIC nations siding with China against the US on a lot of these things. So just more and more fragmentation within the world. And when you fragment politically, it also fragments economically. And so I think for that reason, you're going to see more and more people turning to gold, including governments. You're seeing a lot of central bank buying of gold in various governments. And I think they're doing that because for one thing, China doesn't want to be subject to sanctions if it gets offside with the US the way Russia is. So I think they're moving a little more to gold. You're seeing Russia buying gold. You're seeing a lot of other central banks buying gold. So overall, I just think if we look ahead in the world, you're going to be seeing more and more mercantilism where people are you have trade groups working together, and so they're not going to want to be using the other's dollar. And so what's a good common basis for currency? And gold is your number one. It's been here historically forever, and so that's why I'm a big believer gold will continue to be strong and get stronger in the years ahead.
Okay, thank you for the insight. And you started diving into the function of gold as a store of value, which is of course very useful, like you've explained, for example, when geopolitical disturbances occur. But there's of course other types of gold demand. So could you perhaps maybe dive into what types of gold demand there are and what percentages roughly we're looking at?
I've got more gray hair than you. From my background and belief, it's gold. It is for investment, and so there are other uses. A lot of jewelry demand out of India, gold, but again, that demand in jewelry is for investment. This is where you store your gold. So, in the end, gold always comes back to a store of wealth, and in troubled times, a secure store of wealth. And so there's a lot of talk about different uses, but that's what drives the gold price.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much, Joe, for your time, your knowledge, and your expertise. Tremendously appreciate you coming on this channel.
Thanks. I appreciate the time here.
Great. Perhaps you can now share where the people can follow you and can follow your company at home.
We're at P2 Gold, so at P2Gold.com. And you'll also see us on Twitter. So
awesome. I'll make sure to drop those links down below. And again, thank you so much for coming here.